Who was Ham? Ham was one of Noah's 3 sons, mentioned prominently in the early chapters of Genesis, Genesis 5-32. 6-10. His name in Hebrew, Cam, has been interpreted to mean hot or dark, though the exact origin and meaning remain subject to debate. These interpretations have sparked discussions about his descendants and their geographical and cultural identities. Ham was married and part of Noah's immediate family, which God selected to survive the flood due to Noah's righteousness. This divine selection ensured Ham's lineage would play a significant role in the post-flood world. Ham's role in Noah's family: helping build the ark. Ham was instrumental in assisting his father, Noah, with constructing the ark, a monumental task that required obedience, perseverance, and faith. Along with his brothers, Shem and Japheth, Ham contributed to carrying out God's detailed instructions regarding the ark's dimensions, materials, and design. Genesis 6:14-16. Surviving the flood. Ham, his wife, and the rest of Noah's family entered the ark as God commanded, surviving the catastrophic flood that wiped out all life on earth, save those aboard the vessel. Genesis 6:18, 7-7. This act marked Ham as part of the foundational family from which humanity would repopulate the earth. Ham's descendants and legacy. After the flood, Ham's lineage expanded and became a significant part of biblical history. His descendants are traditionally associated with various nations, regions, and cultures. The sons of Ham. Ham had 4 sons: Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Genesis 10-6. These sons became the progenitors of many ancient civilizations. Cush is linked to the regions of Ethiopia and Sudan, with his descendants often associated with African nations. Mizraim is connected to Egypt, one of the oldest and most influential ancient civilizations. Put is generally associated with the regions of North Africa, possibly Libya. Canaan is best known for giving rise to the Canaanite nations, who inhabited the Promised Land before the arrival of the Israelites. The Table of Nations. In Genesis 10, known as the Table of Nations, Ham's descendants are described as spreading across parts of Africa, the Middle East, and possibly parts of southern Europe. This genealogical record underscores his pivotal role in the post-flood repopulation of the earth. A controversial incident, Ham and Noah. One of the most debated episodes involving Ham occurs in Genesis 9:20-27. After the flood, Noah became a farmer and planted a vineyard. One day, Noah became drunk from the wine and lay uncovered in his tent. Ham saw his father's nakedness and told his brothers, who respectfully covered Noah without looking at him. When Noah awoke, he cursed Canaan, Ham's son, saying, "Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." Genesis 9-25. The exact nature of Ham's offense is not explicitly detailed in the text, but this incident has been the subject of much interpretation and speculation throughout history. Ham's broader legacy. Ham's life and descendants reflect both God's provision in preserving humanity and the complex dynamics of family relationships and human sinfulness. While Ham played a vital role in the survival of Noah's family and the fulfillment of God's promise to repopulate the earth, his story also serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of dishonoring one's family. Ham's legacy is one of diversity, with his descendants influencing cultures and nations far beyond the narrative of Genesis. This multifaceted role highlights how God's plans for a humanity unfold through both triumphs and challenges, shaping the story of redemption and reconciliation in the biblical narrative. Ham played a pivotal role in the story of the flood, participating in one of history's most defining moments. His journey, along with his father Noah, brothers Shem and Japheth, and their families, reflects both God's judgment on a sinful world and his mercy in preserving a remnant for a fresh start. Witnessing the ark's construction, Ham worked alongside his family to build the ark, a monumental task that demanded years of effort and unwavering faith. Despite widespread skepticism and ridicule from the corrupt generation around them, Ham remained obedient to Noah's leadership, trusting in God's instructions. Genesis 6:13-22. Gathering the animals. Ham also witnessed the miraculous gathering of animals, pairs of every kind, brought to the ark under God's command. Genesis 7:8-9. This event underscored God's sovereign control over creation and his plan to preserve life through Noah's family. Once the rains began and the waters rose, Ham and his family entered the ark as God had instructed. For 40 days and 40 nights, torrential rain covered the earth, erasing all living creatures outside the ark. Genesis 7:11-12, 21-23. As a passenger on the ark, Ham experienced God's mercy firsthand, knowing that his survival was due solely to God's grace and Noah's righteousness. During this time, Ham bore witness to the devastating consequences of human sin, while experiencing the profound weight of being chosen to carry forward God's plans for humanity. After the flood waters receded, Noah's family disembarked onto a cleansed earth, where they were tasked with a new beginning. God renewed his covenant with humanity, symbolized by the rainbow, promising never again to destroy the earth by flood. Genesis 9:8-17. God blessed Noah and his sons, commanding them to be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. Genesis 9:1. Ham and his wife were central to fulfilling this command, becoming part of the generational chain that would rebuild and repopulate the world, a new order of life. Ham and his family stepped into a transformed world. The relationship between humanity and creation had shifted. God now permitted humans to eat animals, but prohibited consuming their blood, emphasizing the sanctity of life. Genesis 9:3-4. The post-flood covenant revealed God's enduring patience with humanity despite their flaws. This promise underscored the importance of Ham's role in carrying forward God's intentions for the new world. Ham's involvement in the flood story highlights themes of obedience, judgment, mercy, and renewal. His survival signified God's plan to use imperfect individuals to shape history, reminding us of both the weight of responsibility and the gift of grace. Although Ham's later actions led to familial strife, his presence on the ark ensured the continuation of his lineage and the establishment of nations that would play crucial roles in biblical history. His story serves as a testament to the profound intersection of human choices and divine sovereignty. After the flood, Noah transitioned to farming and became the first recorded vintner in the Bible. As a man who had walked closely with God and survived humanity's destruction, Noah may have sought solace or celebration in his new life by cultivating a vineyard. However, one day, he drank wine from the vineyard and became intoxicated. In his drunken state, Noah lay uncovered inside his tent. Genesis 9:20-21. This moment marks a significant contrast in Noah's life, highlighting his humanity and susceptibility to sin. Though a righteous man who found favor with God, Genesis 6-8, Noah was not immune to personal failings. Ham, one of Noah's 3 sons, entered the tent and saw his father's nakedness. Instead of addressing the situation discreetly, Ham went out and informed his brothers, Shem and Japheth, Genesis 9:22. This does not elaborate on Ham's motives or tone, leaving room for interpretation. Some view Ham's actions as a lack of respect or an act of mockery toward his father's vulnerable state. Others speculate that Ham's telling his brothers may have been an attempt to shame Noah publicly. In the ancient Near East, seeing someone's nakedness, particularly a parent's, was considered deeply dishonorable. By broadcasting what he saw, other than addressing it respectfully, Ham's actions highlighted his disregard for a familial honor and propriety. In contrast to Ham, Shem and Japheth displayed respect and sensitivity. When they learned of their father's condition, they took a garment and approached the tent. Walking backward to avoid seeing Noah's nakedness, they covered him with the garment. Genesis 9:23. Shem and Japheth upheld the dignity of their father by shielding his vulnerability. Reverence for family, their actions reflected a commitment to preserving the family's honor, even in a private and challenging situation. Noah's reaction. When Noah awoke and learned what had happened, he pronounced a prophetic curse on Ham's son, Canaan. Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. Genesis 9:25. The curse did not fall directly on Ham, but on his son Canaan. This has led to extensive debates about its meaning and implications. Some scholars suggest that Noah's words reflected the future moral and spiritual failures of Canaan's descendants, who became the Canaanite nations opposed to Israel. In contrast, Noah blessed Shem and Japheth for their respectful actions, praying for their prosperity and harmonious relationships. Genesis 9:26-27. Lessons from the incident. Even a righteous man like Noah was susceptible to moral failings, reminding us that no one is perfect except God. Honor and shame. The story emphasizes the importance of respecting family and addressing situations with discretion and care. Consequences of actions. Ham's dishonorable behavior had long-term repercussions for his descendants, while Shem and Japheth's respect brought blessings. Despite human failures, God continued to work through Noah's family to fulfill his purposes for humanity. This episode serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities of human relationships, the weight of choices, and the enduring need for grace and humility. When Noah awoke from his drunken stupor, he learned what Ham had done to him. Whether from his other sons or divine revelation, Noah gained insight into Ham's actions and their implications. In response, he pronounced a curse not on Ham directly, but on Ham's youngest son, Canaan. Genesis 9:24-25. Noah's words revealed a prophetic judgment on the future of Canaan's descendants and their place in the unfolding narrative of humanity. By contrast, he offered blessings to Shem and Japheth, affirming their honor and respect. Noah declared, "Cursed be Canaan. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." Genesis 9:25. This does not explain why the curse fell on Canaan other than Ham himself. Some interpretations suggest that Noah targeted Canaan as a way to punish him indirectly, affecting his lineage rather than the man directly. Others propose that Canaan's character or future actions warranted such a judgment, aligning with the behavior of the Canaanite nations described later in the Bible. Canaan's descendants settled in regions that later became known as Canaan, encompassing much of the Promised Land. These nations, including the Amorites, Hittites, Jebusites, and others, often acted in opposition to God's covenant people, Israel. The curse foreshadowed their subjugation during Israel's conquest of the Promised Land under Joshua, Joshua 3:10. The curse on Canaan reflects themes of divine justice and moral accountability. While Ham's act was dishonorable, the consequences extended to his offspring, demonstrating the far-reaching impact of sin in familial and societal dynamics. Noah's blessings for Shem and Japheth acknowledged their honor and respect during the incident and established their roles in God's unfolding plan for humanity. Blessing for Shem. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. Genesis 9:26. Shem was chosen as the ancestor of the Semitic peoples, including Israel, God's chosen nation. Through Shem's lineage came Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and ultimately, Jesus Christ. Divine favor. The blessing highlighted Shem's relationship with God, affirming his descendants as the primary recipients of divine revelat. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem. And may Canaan be the slave of Japheth. Genesis 9:27. Japheth's blessing pointed to his descendants' growth and territorial expansion. Many scholars associate Japheth with the Indo-European peoples, whose influence spread widely. Dwelling in Shem's tents, this phrase suggests a harmonious relationship between Japheth's descendants and those of Shem. It could symbolize Japheth's participation in the spiritual blessings bestowed on Shem's line, culminating in the inclusion of Gentiles in the New Covenant. Lessons from Noah's curse and blessings. Ham's dishonorable actions had generational consequences, emphasizing the far-reaching impact of human choices. Honor and respect. Shem and Japheth's respect for their father resulted in blessings that shaped their futures and legacies. God's sovereignty. The prophetic nature of Noah's words demonstrates God's control over history and his plans for nations and peoples. Hope amid judgment. While the curse on Canaan underscored the gravity of sin, the blessings for Shem and Japheth pointed to God's redemptive plan for humanity. The stage for the development of nations and God's unfolding story of redemption through Abraham's descendants. Associated with Ethiopia or Nubia, Cush's descendants settled in the region south of Egypt, including parts of Sudan. The name Cush is often synonymous with the land of Ethiopia in biblical texts, for example Isaiah 18:1. These regions were known for their wealth, military strength, and cultural influence. Mizraim is identified as the progenitor of Egypt. The Hebrew word for Egypt, Mitzrayim, is directly derived from his name. Mizraim's descendants contributed to the establishment of one of the world's most advanced ancient civilizations, renowned for its architecture, science, and art. Egypt became a key player in biblical narratives, including the Exodus story. Put is traditionally linked to Libya and other regions of North Africa. His descendants likely inhabited areas along the Mediterranean coast, contributing to the cultural and military history of the region. Canaan became the father of the Canaanite peoples, who settled in the Promised Land. His lineage included various tribes, such as the Hittites, Amorites, Jebusites, and Hivites. The Canaanites were known for their idolatrous practices and immorality, which led to their eventual judgment and displacement by the Israelites during the conquest of the Promised Land under Joshua. Notable descendants of Ham. Nimrod is described as a mighty hunter before the Lord, Genesis 10:8-9, and a powerful leader. He established some of the earliest and most influential cities in human history, including Babylon, Erech, and Nineveh, Genesis 10:10-12. Nimrod's association with Babylon ties him to the Tower of Babel story, where humanity's pride and defiance led to God scattering the nations, Genesis 11:1-9. Canaan's descendants inhabited the land that God promised to Abraham and his offspring. These nations became significant adversaries to Israel. The Canaanites were known for their fortified cities, advanced agriculture, and religious practices, which often involved idolatry and child sacrifice. Despite their opposition to Israel, individuals like Rahab, a Canaanite, demonstrated faith in God and became part of Israel's history and the lineage of Jesus. Joshua 2. Matthew 1-5, Themes and Implications of Ham's Lineage. The descendants of Ham established some of the world's most prominent civilizations, such as Egypt and Babylon, which greatly influenced history, religion, and politics. The tension between Ham's descendants and the Israelites highlights the broader biblical theme of God's redemptive work amid human sin. Despite the opposition of nations like the Canaanites, individuals from Ham's line, such as Rahab and the Ethiopian eunuch Acts 8:26-40, found redemption through faith in God. The rise and fall of Ham's descendants' nations demonstrate God's ultimate control over human history, using even adversarial nations to fulfill his purposes. Ham's lineage stands as a testament to the complexity of human history and God's ongoing work to bring about his divine plan, even through flawed and diverse peoples. The story of Ham offers profound lessons about family dynamics, human nature, and God's overarching plans. It explores themes of honor, the consequences of sin, human frailty, and God's sovereign purposes for humanity. 1. Honor and shame. The incident of Noah's drunkenness emphasizes the importance of showing respect to one's parents and elders. Ham's dishonor. Ham's actions, whether motivated by mockery, indifference, or disrespect, highlight a failure to honor his father. Instead of protecting Noah's dignity, Ham exposed his vulnerability to others. Genesis 9:22. Shem and Japheth's respect. In contrast, Shem and Japheth showed reverence for their father by covering his nakedness without looking at him. Their actions uphold the biblical principle of honoring parents, later codified in the Ten Commandments. Honor your father and your mother. Exodus 20:12. Lesson: honor within families strengthens relationships and upholds societal values. Dishonor, on the other hand, can lead to division and long-lasting consequences. 2. The consequences of sin. The curse pronounced by Noah on Canaan demonstrates how sin often affects more than just the individual, extending its reach to future generations. Generational impact. Ham's dishonorable actions resulted in a prophetic curse on his son, Canaan, whose descendants would face judgment and displacement by the Israelites. This illustrates the far-reaching effects of sin, especially within families and communities. Divine justice. While the curse may seem severe, it underscores the biblical principle that actions have consequences. Yet it also serves as a reminder of God's ultimate justice and mercy, as even Canaanites, like Rahab, could find redemption through faith. Lesson: choices good or bad can shape the legacy of families and nations. Living with integrity and obedience to God minimizes negative repercussions. 3. Human weakness and redemption. Ham's story and Noah's failure revealed the complexities of human nature. Even among those who walk closely with God, Noah's weakness, despite his righteousness and faithfulness in building the ark, Noah's drunkenness shows his vulnerability to sin. This moment reminds us that no one is immune to moral failure. God's grace. Noah's story, however, also demonstrates that God's plans for redemption are not thwarted by human weakness. Both Noah and his descendants remained part of God's unfolding narrative, despite their flaws. Lesson: human imperfection underscores the need for God's grace and redemption. Even the faithful are dependent on God's mercy and forgiveness. 4. God's sovereignty in nations. Ham's descendants played crucial roles in biblical history, often as key adversaries to Israel. Their rise and fall highlight God's control over human history. Shaping of nations. Ham's lineage included powerful civilizations like Egypt, Babylon, and Canaan. Though these nations often opposed God's people, their stories were woven into God's larger plan for humanity. Israel's role. The interactions between Ham's descendants and Israel illustrate God's covenantal promises and his commitment to establish his chosen people in the Promised Land. Redemption for all nations. While some nations descended from and opposed God, individuals from these groups, such as Rahab a Canaanite and the Ethiopian eunuch a Cushite, were welcomed into God's covenant through faith. Lesson: God is sovereign over the rise and fall of nations. Even those who seem far from him can be redeemed and included in his plans. Respect and integrity matter. Ham's story teaches the importance of honoring family and addressing others' vulnerabilities with sensitivity and care. Sin has consequences. Actions can have generational effects, emphasizing the need for accountability and repentance. God's grace covers human weakness. Noah's and Ham's imperfections reveal humanity's ongoing need for God's mercy and redemption. God's plan is unstoppable. Despite human failures, God remains in control, using even flawed individuals and nations to accomplish his purposes. Ham's story serves as a reminder of the complexity of human nature, the weight of choices, and the hope found in God's redemptive work across generations. Ham's story, particularly the incident of Noah's drunkenness and the subsequent curse on Canaan, has been subject to significant debate, speculation, and misuse throughout history. Understanding the context and addressing misinterpretations is essential for a clearer view of the biblical text. 1. Ham's sin. The nature of Ham's actions toward Noah has been a point of contention among scholars and theologians. The text silence, Genesis 9:22, simply states that Ham saw the nakedness of his father and told his brothers. However, the text does not provide further details about Ham's motives or actions, leaving room for various interpretations. Speculations about Ham's actions. Some interpretations suggest that Ham's actions may have gone beyond mere observation, mockery or disrespect. Ham might have ridiculed Noah's vulnerability rather than treating the situation with the respect it deserved. Possible exploitation. A few scholars propose that the phrase "saw the nakedness of his father" could imply a more serious transgression, such as an immoral act or an attempt to usurp Noah's authority. This interpretation relies on parallels with other biblical passages where similar language carries deeper implications, for example Leviticus 18-6:18. Symbolic meaning. Others view Ham's sin representative of dishonoring family or undermining Noah's leadership. The importance of context. While intriguing, these theories remain speculative. The text primarily emphasizes Ham's failure to respond appropriately to his father's vulnerability, contrasting his actions with the respect shown by Shem and Japheth. 2. The curse of Canaan. The curse pronounced by Noah on Canaan, Ham's son, has been one of the most controversial aspects of the story, particularly due to its misuse in history. Why Canaan and not Ham? Some scholars suggest that Noah's curse on Canaan, rather than Ham, reflect a prophetic insight into the future behavior of Canaan's descendants. Others view this as a poetic or symbolic judgment meant to highlight the consequences of Ham's dishonor through his lineage. Misuse of the curse, historical justification for slavery. During the transatlantic slave trade, some individuals and groups misused the curse of Canaan to justify the enslavement of African peoples. They falsely equated Ham's descendants with Africans and claimed that the curse mandated perpetual servitude. Racial misinterpretations. This interpretation is baseless. The biblical text does not associate Ham's descendants exclusively with Africa, nor does it justify slavery or racial hierarchy. Such readings distort the intent and message of Scripture. Biblical teachings on human dignity. The Bible affirms the equality and dignity of all people as created in the image of God. Genesis 1:27. Misinterpretations of the curse of Canaan contradict the overarching biblical themes of justice, mercy, and redemption for all nations, for example Galatians 3:28, Acts 17:26, 3. Broader interpretive challenges. Ambiguity in the text. The lack of detail about Ham's actions and Noah's motivations for cursing Canaan invites speculation, but also highlights the need for careful, context-sensitive interpretation. Cultural and historical distance. Understanding the ancient Near Eastern context is crucial for interpreting this story. Concepts of honor, shame, and familial responsibility played a central role in these societies, influencing the narrative's framing. 4. Theological reflections on the controversies. Sin and redemption. Ham's story is ultimately about the human propensity for sin and the need for God's grace. While the consequences of Ham's actions were significant, they do not define the ultimate destiny of his descendants, as redemption is available to all. God's sovereignty and justice. Despite human sin and misuse of Scripture, God's justice prevails. The misuse of the curse of Canaan serves as a cautionary example of how Scripture can be distorted for harmful purposes, emphasizing the need for careful and faithful interpretation. Avoid speculation. Stick to the text's central themes: honor, consequences of sin, and God's sovereignty while acknowledging the text's ambiguity. Reject misuse. Historical misapplications of the curse of Canaan, particularly to justify racism or slavery, are unfounded and contrary to biblical principles of equality and justice. Focus on redemption. The story of Ham and Canaan, like all biblical narratives, ultimately points to humanity's need for God's grace and redemption through Jesus Christ. By addressing these controversies with clarity and humility, we can better understand the lessons of Ham's story and avoid perpetuating harmful misinterpretations. Ham's story extends beyond his actions in Genesis 9, with his descendants playing pivotal roles in shaping biblical history. The nations that emerged from Ham's lineage became both prominent civilizations and adversaries to God's people, highlighting themes of human choices, divine justice, and God's sovereignty in history. 1. The biblical role of Ham's descendants. Ham's legacy is primarily seen through the nations that arose from his lineage, as outlined in the Table of Nations, Genesis 10. These descendants left a significant mark in biblical history, often shaping the narrative of Israel's journey and interactions with surrounding peoples. The Canaanites, descended from Ham's son Canaan, were inhabitants of the Promised Land. They became adversaries of Israel during the conquest of Canaan under Joshua. Known for their idolatry and immorality, the Canaanites were judged by God, but their presence in biblical history also underscores the possibility of redemption. For example, Rahab, a Canaanite woman, displayed faith and became part of Jesus' genealogy. Joshua 2, Matthew 1-5. Egypt. Mizraim. Egypt, founded by Ham's son Mizraim, became one of the most advanced civilizations of the ancient world. Egypt played a critical role in biblical history, notably as the place where the Israelites were enslaved before God's miraculous deliverance during the Exodus 1-15. Egypt's story illustrates both God's judgment, for example the plagues, and his redemptive power. Babylon. Nimrod, a descendant of Cush, established powerful cities like Babylon and Nineveh. Genesis 10:10-12. Babylon, associated with pride and rebellion against God, for example, the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, became a recurring symbol of human arrogance and opposition to divine authority. Despite this, Babylon also served as a place of refinement for God's people during the Babylonian exile, showing that even adversarial nations could play a role in God's plan. Other nations. Cush and Put. Cush is associated with Ethiopia and Nubia, regions that had sporadic interactions with Israel. The Ethiopian eunuch's conversion in Acts 8 reflects the inclusivity of the gospel. Put, often linked to Libya, represents regions in North Africa that contributed to the cultural and military history of the ancient world. 2. Lessons for humanity. Ham's story and legacy offer timeless lessons that resonate across generations. Ham's dishonor toward his father Noah serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of respecting family and authority figures. This principle extends beyond family dynamics to societal relationships, underscoring the value of integrity, humility, and reverence. The consequences of sin. The curse on Canaan highlights the far-reaching impact of sin, not just on individuals, but on their descendants. It reminds us that choices often have generational repercussions. At the same time, the story emphasizes God's justice and mercy, showing that even those under judgment can find redemption through faith. God's sovereignty in history. The rise and fall of Ham's descendants' nations demonstrate God's ultimate control over human history. Civilizations like Egypt and Babylon, despite their power, were subject to God's will and were used to fulfill his purposes. This sovereignty reminds humanity of its dependence on God and the futility of resisting his plan. 3. The redemptive thread in Ham's legacy. While Ham's story includes instances of dishonor and judgment, it also reflects the possibility of redemption. Individual redemption. Rahab and the Ethiopian eunuch, heralds of individuals from Ham's lineage who found salvation through faith, showing that God's grace extends to all peoples. Hope for nations. The inclusion of nations like Egypt and Cush in prophetic visions of worshipping God, for example Isaiah 19:23-25, reflects the ultimate reconciliation of all nations under God's rule. 4. Key takeaways from Ham's legacy. Human choices matter. Ham's story and the actions of his descendants show the impact of human decisions, whether for good or ill, on the course of history. God's justice and mercy coexist. The judgment on Canaan and the redemption of individuals like Rahab highlight the balance of God's justice against sin and his mercy for those who turn to him. A broader narrative. Ham's descendants' interactions with Israel reflect a larger biblical theme of God's redemptive plan for all nations, despite their flaws or opposition. Ham's legacy is a complex tapestry of human sin, divine judgment, and redemption. His story and lineage remind us of the profound interconnectedness of human history and God's unwavering sovereignty in shaping it for His ultimate purposes. May your spiritual journey be filled with God's grace and peace. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to inspire others on their walk with the Lord.